right. Good morning. We're going to try this again. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, my name's Jilly, and this channel is basically about my spiritual awakening journey and also about my crazy dreams that I've been having for, well, really all my life, but I've been tracking them for the last few years. And Spirit has guided me to put them out there. So hopefully in some way they help. I don't know if you can resonate with some of the situations, or if you've had similar dreams, or you have an idea of what these dreams mean to you, which might be something completely different from what they mean to me. Anyways, for today's dream, I was in my car and I'm driving to this huge palatial mansion of a place for a meeting. Apparently I'm meeting with like the CEO of a big company or something along those lines. And it's evening to nighttime, probably summer, like still kind of nice out. And I'm pulling into this long driveway, and as I get closer to the house, there's tons of really fancy cars all on the, driveway and kind of off to the side. And anyways, people are coming out to their cars, and I'm just like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh, he's leaving. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So I look over and I see him getting into his car, which is parked in some like 4-car garage. It looks like a house. And he's backing out, and his car is convertible. So I roll down my window and I'm just like, hey, do you need me to move? Can you get by okay? And he's like, nope, you're fine. You stay right where you are. You can park there. And I was like, okay. So I parked and I get out of the car and I'm heading into the house for, guessing that he's coming back eventually to have this meeting. And it's funny because after I talked to him, when our cars were passing each other, and I just talked to him briefly about nothing in particular, but after that interaction, for some reason, everybody was all treating me like I was special or famous or something, and I'm just like, okay, like I was some big deal. So anyways, I'm climbing the stairs into this big foyer of the house, and I'm met by his I don't want to call it an entourage exactly, but it's like he's got these teams, and the two main teams that are like kind of fighting for his attention. One team is led by a adorable petite female with long wavy hair that's almost white. She kind of reminds me of like a little elf or pixie or something, and very spirited. And then the other team is led by this beautiful, tall, sleek Asian woman with long, flowing, silky black hair. And the two teams each have maybe 3 or 4 people on them. And when I come into the foyer, they're literally like, I want to say fighting, but it looked more like dancing, trying to get the CEO's attention, because he had somehow come back to the house by then. And I'm kind of just looking at him like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I don't really care. That's not what I'm here for. So I just walk past them all in all their hoopla, and head for the conference room. And it's a huge room with a long kind of rectangular table. And when I enter the room, I'm immediately hit by a sense of power. It feels like these people are not just people, they're like gods or deities or something along those lines. And I was like, oh wow, okay. So I kind of sneak past, and there's a big kind of comfy upholstered like wingback chair sitting at the end that's for me. And as I get down to it, there's this cute little toddler-sized grandma, very spirited, very rambunctious, shall we say, And I get the feeling she's like the village elder or something along those lines, but she's literally like the size of a toddler, maybe a small child, like maybe 5-year-old type child, but she's supposed to be, you know, elderly. And she's very put out that I've come back and I'm now kicking her out of my seat. And I'm kind of snickering a little bit. And to the side of me is Awkwafina. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her. She's a comedian slash actress. She's a hoot and a half. Anyways, she grabs her. She's like, "Come on, Grandma." She puts her on her lap. And the, you know, elderly woman, who's, like I say, the size of a small child, sits there and just pouts. I mean, that bottom lip is sticking out hardcore. And Awkwafina and I are just like laughing and just joking at her antics. And I look over at both Awkwafina and the little village elder grandma woman, and I'm just like, oh, it's so good to see you both, and I'm so happy to be back, and, you know, thank you for having me, and all that kind of thing. And Awkwafina is like giving me a side hug. She's like, "You too." And the little village elder grandma lady is just like, I don't know if she's embarrassed or what, but she's like hiding in all these layers of tulle that are part of Awkwafina's dress. And so I'm like, okay. And then as I finally sit and I look down towards the other end of the table, that's where the big CEO guy is. And I'm just like, okay, cool, he's back. And we start the meeting, apparently, and then my brain switches into another dreamscape. So after that, I'm walking around this really nice but hilly part of town. It's a neighborhood here in town where there's really fancy older homes that are like from the 1900s, and just beautiful old homes. And the hills are, well, a pain in the butt, gorgeous, because from up there you're able to get a view across the whole city and, you know, out to the water, and it's just fantastic views everywhere you go. So I'm walking around up there and I'm looking for my scooter. Apparently I've left my Vespa scooter somewhere, which I don't actually have one, but in my dream I do. And I run into this non-binary person who's very childlike in their energy and spirit, and they want me to play hide and seek with them. They have taken some item of mine and hidden it somewhere, and I'm just like kind of annoyed at first because I'm, you know, on this mission to find my scooter and I haven't figured out where I left it. And then I take a big breath and let out a sigh, and I give into that playful spirit and childlike energy, and I'm like, okay, let's go play. And so I immediately look behind this person, and there's kind of an opaque tarp, and I can clearly see on the other side of this tarp is where this item is that they've hidden from me. And before you ask, no, it's not the scooter I was looking for. It's something, yeah, I don't know, yay sized. Anyways, so I can see it, but this person, this entity, clearly wants to play. And so I'm like, okay, come on, let's go. I'm gonna look over here and I'm gonna look over there, and we look high and low, and I make a big deal of it. And when I finally do find the item, I'm like, oh my gosh, there it is. Thank you so much. I'm so happy I finally found it. And, you know, they're like, yay, you did it. And, you know, they're asking me, did I do good? Did I do good? And I'm like, oh yeah, you did great. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for playing with me. And then since I found my item, apparently it's time to move forward. And so I go to a different part of a dream. So from there, I am trying to teach people how to schedule patients. And on the computer, every time I try to enter this playground or this scape, this area where you can pretend schedule people, my mom's own appointment keeps popping up. And I'm just like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. And I, try to get back over into the teaching area again. And my mom's appointment keeps popping up, and I'm just getting frustrated. I'm like, why is this here? Why does this keep coming up? This is not what I'm doing right now. This is not my focus right now. It needs to go away, and I'm just getting frustrated. And my crew that I'm trying to teach are like friends, coworkers, and they're like, they can tell I'm just about ready to lose it. I'm just getting so frustrated with the system. And so they hand me a small kitten to play with, and it's the most tiny, adorable, fluffy little thing. And there's a red string that's dangling over my left shoulder. And I can't remember if somebody is dangling it or if it's like part of my clothing or what, but this kitten is kind of like tapping at my shoulder and playing with this little red string. And eventually, after playing for a little while, the kitten just falls asleep in my arms, and I'm breathing much slower and much less stressed and anxious now. So I hand the kitten back, and the next thing I know, there is my friend's dog is like tugging at the sleeve on my left arm, and I'm just like, what's going on? And I can tell he's not trying to bite me, but it's like he's trying to either get my attention or pull me somewhere, something along those lines. So it's because it's kind of grabbing my sweatshirt or my clothes. And so I look at my my friends and coworkers that are there, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they're like kind of freaking out and like pointing to my right wrist, and their eyes are big, and I look over, and there's this decent sized spider crawling across my wrist, and I look over and I'm like, oh, it's just Shakti. And they're like, what? I'm like, oh yeah, she's a deity, and she's been keeping vigil outside my house for a few weeks, but I haven't seen her. I didn't know what happened to her, so she's just letting me know that she's here. And it's totally okay. She's not dangerous. She's not scary. It's totally all right. And they're like, okay. So I get up and I gently take her outside and find her a safe place to be. And then after that, I wake up. So that was my convoluted 3-part dream. It was all in the same evening, but how the dreams work. They just kind of shuffle from place to place. Not necessarily any continuity, but there was a lot of really fun energy in this particular dream that I just loved. And it felt like for some reason I was more important than I realized. I don't know, in different parts, especially with the whole CEO conference room thing. Anyways, please like, share, subscribe. I'm hoping that this means something to somebody. And then I just wanted to talk about my joy briefly for the day. When I first started on this kind of spiritual awakening path, if you will, because it's definitely a journey. It's not just like a flip a switch and you're there or you're not. Anyways, I originally thought that I had to like be light all the time, and after the smoke recently, I kind of had an epiphany, if you will. When I was looking out at what's normally my beautiful view, everything was just this homogeneous gray from the smoke, and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the trees across the alley. I couldn't see my gorgeous view of the water and the mountains. I couldn't see anything, and it was just, everything was just this homogeneous gray. And it was kind of depressing for a few days there. And I realized that, without that contrast, without the light and the dark, I don't like it as much. It's better when there's a nice blend of both, when there's a little light and a little dark, and not one or the other is taking over. Because even when it's like hot, sunny, glaring days where it's just light all the time, it's too much for me. And when it's also dark, rainy, gloomy all the time, it's too much for me. But the days that are the best are the ones where it's a nice mix of light and dark. You've got the light, which is causing, you know, shadows, and you can see the dappled light down underneath big trees and things like that. And it made me realize that, well, when I was walking in the park the other day, I saw this beautiful, huge, old maple tree. Half of it was, you know, just shining in the beautiful sunlight that was out because, you know, the smoke had finally cleared. But part of it was in the shade because there was a bigger tree next to it that was causing the shade. And I'm like, oh, it's light, it's dark, but it's still this beautiful tree, regardless of the light and the dark. So I guess I kind of have come to understand that I myself am a beautiful being just the way I am, even when there's light, even when there's dark. But the best is when there's a combination of both and it's in balance. And that's more what I'm striving for now. I'm not striving to be light all the time because that just doesn't make sense. In this 3D reality, there's always going to be light and dark. And the place where I feel the best is when there's a nice balance of both. So anyways, hopefully that meant something to somebody. And I'm just gonna keep putting these videos out there, and if you have comments, please leave them for me. I always like to hear what people think, or if you've had crazy dreams, I'd like to hear about them, or if you have any thoughts on what the dreams might mean, that would be fabulous too. Anyways, I hope you all have a beautiful, blessed day, and I will quit my rambling now.